Welcome back, everybody, to the Fretboard Journal podcast. I'm your host, Jason Verlinde. As I hope you know, 20 years ago, we started the Fretboard Journal, and our new 57th issue is mailing to all of our subscribers right now. These mail out in batches, so if you are a current subscriber, you're going to be seeing it over the next week or two, depending on where in the world you live. And if you are not a subscriber, please join us. Just go to fretboardjournal.com. For a limited time, you'll get that 57th issue at no extra cost. So please join us if you haven't yet. Also, I guess I should remind you, because it's already September of 2025, the Fretboard Journal makes for one heck of a great gift if you have any guitar lovers in your life. So speaking of guitar lovers, earlier this summer, I was lucky enough to interview an incredibly talented musician named Jacob Cole. I don't expect Jacob to be on your radar, but I'm hoping that we can shed light a little bit on some of the cool music that he's been making over the years and his backstory. Jacob is based in Melbourne, and if you love the music of artists like Blake Mills or Ryan Richter, or if you love it when Gillian Welch and David Rawlings do their long extended instrumental jams, you will definitely love Jacob's record. It's called Slow Gold. It's available on Bandcamp. It's also available on all the streaming platforms. And I heard this record and I really fell in love with it. And then this amazing article came out in The Guardian that I'm going to be linking to in our show notes, written by Jacob's sister. It is a super poignant and beautiful article. Jacob's sister obviously loves him very deeply, and I think you should all check it out, along with Jacob's record, Slow Gold. If I can be vulnerable for a minute, one of the coolest things that happened at last month's Fretboard Summit was hearing from so many great musicians and builders from around the world, literally, who told me how important this podcast is to them and how important the magazine is, and how even when times are super hard, we all kind of feel connected thanks to these great guitar stories and thanks to incredible music and instruments. So that is my goal for the rest of the year and for 2026, is to keep connecting you all. As is probably obvious, this podcast is largely a labor of love, but we do have a trio of sponsors that help us out in a big way. First up is Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar, based right here in Seattle, Washington. If you've never been to their store or their website, you are in for a treat. They have an incredible array of vintage synths, guitars, effects pedals, amps, you name it. They have a full-service repair shop, and they have this just incredibly eclectic array of both valuable and priceless instruments, as well as quirky instruments, which really speaks to me. So please go to mmguitarbar.com and check them out. We're also brought to you by Stringjoy Strings, an incredible, cool string company based out of Nashville, Tennessee. I just met Scott from Stringjoy at our summit, and you all can try out Stringjoy Strings by using the discount code FRETBOARD. At their website, you will save 10% off of your first order. They've got acoustic and electric guitar strings, mandolin strings, and banjo strings, and they do all sorts of crazy custom sets. We are also brought to you by Peghead Nation, my favorite guitar instruction portal around. If you want to be a better Americana, bluegrass, jazz musician, or any point in between, go to Peghead Nation. You can get your first month free by using that same discount code FRETBOARD when you go to pegheadnation.com. Those are our big announcements. Our 57th issue is mailing to everybody right now. If you are a subscriber, be on the lookout for it in the next week or two. Like I said, anybody who wants to join us late in the game, please do. It's a beautiful magazine that comes out 4 times a year, featuring some of our favorite stories from the world of fretted instruments. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Australia's own Jacob Cole. Jacob, welcome to the Fretboard Journal podcast.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me.
All the way from Melbourne.
Yeah, I love my way.
So I've been listening to your new record, and then I dove into all the other records, and I definitely hear the influence of a lot of musicians I think we share a mutual affinity for. I just would love to hear your story and sort of like how you found guitar first, and then we'll dive into everything.
Sure. Well, I've basically been playing guitar for about 30 years. So I started when I was around 10. And my parents had this amazing music collection, which was a big, when I think about it now, it's quite a remarkable, expansive collection of records and cassettes, and then later CDs, and they were just music obsessives. And so I heard a lot of the stuff that I'm still obsessed with now as like a young child. And so that really had, when I look back, I'm like, that had a huge impact on the things I'm drawn to and the way I play. And so they were super into like Bob Dylan and Neil Young and Tom Waits and Randy Newman. And but then there were even things like, they had the early Daniel Lanois solo stuff on cassette. And so I was hearing all that stuff that I'm just totally in love with now still as like, a young teenager. And so basically, I got obsessed. Once I could play a few blues licks at maybe age 12, then I was just totally hooked. And I was just obsessed, basically in love with this instrument. And I just spent, my teenage years playing blues and being really into that and not really taking much. I was kind of into, there was all this other mainstream music going on, but I was like, no, this is my thing. And then I went to uni and studied music as well. And then I got more into jazz at that time. And so that's when I discovered all the, John Scofield and Bill Frisell and Pat Metheny, those guys. And I became super obsessed with those guys for like several years. And then since uni, I just have spent the last 20 years just kind of a lot of it going back to the stuff that I previously liked and the stuff that I grew up listening to, like more country stuff and kind of blues influenced stuff, and have just spent, a couple of decades just sort of playing in bands around Melbourne and doing my own stuff. Like more recently, I've started making these albums, which have been really great experiences for me. I just love being in the studio and just trying to write music that sort of encompasses all the things like improvising and then a love of all this older music and just, so that's, in a nutshell, that's sort of been my journey. But I'm just obsessed with improvising, and I'll spend hours every week just sort of sitting around and working on this stuff. And then I have to, occasionally I'll go, I want to write some music, but it's mostly just sitting around kind of going, this instrument is just sort of, intriguing to me still after all these years. So, yeah.
What was that record collection abnormal for a family in Australia back in that era, like Daniel Lanois and all those kinds of records?
I think so. Like, I mean, none of my peers had anything remotely like that, because I also grew up in a small, quite small kind of village, I guess, in the country in New South Wales. But then, but my parents had moved from Sydney, so they were a bit more cosmopolitan, and so maybe they brought that kind of coolness from the big city to this little country town. So there weren't many people in that. There was a few people that were like super into music that I remember around, but I mean, certainly none of my peers were into any of this stuff at all. So that was sort of unusual, I guess. But yeah.
And I've only listened to your output under your name, which has been for the last 5 or so years, including the new record Slow Gold. And I was just wondering, like, when I listen to these records, I hear Blake Mills and Ry Cooder and Frizzell and Schofield and some of these names that you mentioned. Were the bands that you were in prior to that of that vein, or was it like all over the map in terms of style?
It's been all over the map, but it's I played a lot of sort of old country music for several years. I was in a band with a singer called Sal Kimber, and we did a lot of touring kind of regionally and around Australia. Did a mini Canadian tour, and that was so I got to do a lot of the stuff that I like in that band, like the sort of reverby, Ry Coodery kind of stuff. Not that I really play slide, but those sounds, and I got to do lots of solos and improvising. So, and then more recently, I've been playing in like a soul band that's just been together for maybe 13 or 14 years, and that's a really great band full of great musicians. And we do kind of slightly more obscure soul stuff, but then we do rock and roll and and they're all really great players in that band. So it's super loose and super just fun, and we'd hardly ever rehearse, and it's a great vibe. So there are a couple of things, but yeah, I've done a bunch of other singer-songwriter stuff as well, and playing as a sideman, and yeah, I've sort of got to do sort of my thing, I guess. I've never been one of those guys that, plays a lot of parts, or that's not been my thing at all. I'm not good at that,
Is the Melbourne music scene such that you can live off of just being a musician?
No, I mean, certainly not for me. I have a day job, so I'm a librarian as well, which basically pays for my life. So the music doesn't pay for much of my life, to be honest. I mean, I have friends that are around that do make a living just off music, but unless you kind of really break through to a different level where you're like touring and getting really big crowds, the people I know that are doing that are mostly just hustling and doing, all sorts of whatever they can get. But most people I find in Melbourne, most of the best musicians even often have a teaching gig or have some kind of side gig. So I think it's possible in Melbourne, but yeah, you've really got to be out there playing a few nights a week, and then those gigs, even doing that, the gigs aren't going to pay enough really to pay your rent and stuff. So it's not easy, but
What kind of library do you work for?
I work in a hospital library. So it's the Royal Melbourne Hospital, so one of the biggest hospitals in Melbourne, and it's dealing with all the health sciences material and sourcing materials for doctors, and then students that are studying out of the hospital as well. So yeah, it's, as far as a day job, I like it. It's it's quiet and it's pretty low stress, and it feels like you're providing a good service. You're not selling anything, or
Was it? I don't know if in terms of like your records under your own name. I don't know if Slow Gold, the new one, was this way, but did I see that you recorded in Tasmania?
Yeah, so I've recorded the last 2 albums in Tasmania with my good friend and amazing musician and producer and engineer Jethro Pickett. So he's in the soul band that I'm in as well, but he's from Tasmania, so he's moved back there a few years back and built this amazing home studio. It's actually on the Huon River, so it's an old apple shed. So it's quite amazing. So you walk in and there's a big window just looking onto it. So it's in stilts on the water. And so, yeah, I've done that with the last 2 albums where I've gone down there and just stayed for like a week at his house, and you just wake up and start recording, and he's got all the gear. And so most of the stuff I use in the album is all his guitars and his everything, because he's got better gear than me.
For us North Americans, I think the only reference we have is cartoons and maybe the Tasmanian Devil, and then John Fahey recorded a record live in Tasmania. How far is that from Melbourne?
It's really, I mean, to fly there, it's really quick. It's like, I think only an hour or so. So it's really close. But you can get the boat, which is, it's an overnight kind of trip on a boat if you want to take your car over. But it's close, and Tasmania in recent years has a really vibrant music scene, and there's a lot going on down there. So it's sort of surprised. It had a reputation of being sort of the sort of sad cousin of the rest of the country, but now it's definitely not that. It's sort of like Hobart is it's a really sought after place to live, and the property prices are really high, and there's a big art scene there. And yeah, so but I just love going somewhere different. Like, I recorded bits and pieces at home, but I love being in a studio and collaborating with someone else and having someone to say, yeah, that's good. I know let's try that again. So I like the collaboration.
What was I want to hear about the gear you used on Slow Gold, but also before we get into the minutia of that, like what was the thought behind it, and what were you going for?
I guess with this album, and in a sense with the last one too, which is called Knightsville, I was just trying to essentially make kind of simple music that where I could do a lot of where I could be heavily kind of improvised, but then also with a focus on simplish kind of melodies and essentially trying to bring all these elements of what I love into one thing that's just sort of all these things from my past. My love of, Bob Dylan and Lucinda Williams, all these kind of flavors into something that's not really jazz at all, but it's sort of maybe jazz adjacent, and it's not really blues, and it's sort of hopefully it's kind of own thing. And I guess the idea came from just wanting to express myself in that way and try something that felt just like me. So the newer album, Slow Gold, is maybe a bit more sonic, a bit more harmonically adventurous. Like I put in a few more, maybe slightly more jazzy things, whereas the first album was like kind of a lot of just kind of cowboy chords and really simple structures. But I find the simple stuff is really hard to do. So it's kind of easy to get more complex. As soon as you go, no, I want it to be simple, then it can sound really cheesy. Or, unless you're someone like Bill Frisell who can make these really simple things sound just so beautiful. But it's really hard to do. So, yeah, it's easy to be complex and weird. But
yeah. And did you just tote a ton of gear down there, or just a guitar, or not much of anything?
No, I mean, for this last one, I don't think I took anything. So because Jethro has a ton of guitars and amps, and I sort of trust him and his gear. And I'm not really, maybe I took one guitar. I think I took a Jazz Master, but I don't think I ended up using it at all because he's just sounded better than mine. So I'm not really like attached to any one instrument in a big way. I don't really have like, this is my sound, this guitar or anything. It's just sort of, they're all just tools, and I hopefully can pick one up and go, okay, this is a nice kind of vibe and make it work.
Yeah. Have you been able to play? So these are instrumentals. They sound like the instrumental tracks from your favorite records, like for most Fretboard Journal, listeners. I think they, you mentioned Gillian Welch and Neil Young, and you really just capture that vibe so well. Are you a gearhead at home?
No, I'm really not. All my guitars are like, cheap guitars, just kind of functional. And then I have, really kind of basic setup. I have a few amps, and I've been using a really small pedal board, which is, it's like I've experimented with all sorts of pedals and stuff, but at the moment it's really simplified. And so I think I have like 5 pedals that I gig with, and they're all just different iterations of sort of different drive sounds and a delay and a reverb. But yeah, I like the idea of trying to keep it really simple and try not to rely on any piece of gear to sort of make it work. So, but I have a Jazz Master. I've been playing a Strat recently again, which was like the first guitar I started on. Well, it's not the same guitar, but I've gone back to playing the Strat, which I've been kind of loving. And I was playing a Maton. Do you know Maton?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Tommy Emmanuel.
So the Maton, they do electrics, which I guess are less well known.
Yeah, the electrics don't make it up here usually, just the acoustics.
Yeah,
Tommy. Yeah.
So I have a nice Maton, which was my main guitar for years, and that's on the album a bit as well. And that was my wife, Lily, gave that to me many years ago. So it's sort of, yeah.
Yeah. Are you playing shows under your own name, doing this kind of music, or not really?
Not really. That I do plan to do that. That's my next thing, is to like just plan a launch, and at least do a gig or hopefully a few gigs, hopefully with the people that are on the album. Um, but yeah, the wasn't really like that I had a band and then went to the studio. It was sort of like I asked the people all these great musicians, if they would be part of it. And so some of it was done live, but a lot of it was done in bits and pieces. Yeah, so it would be sort of getting all that together. And I also have spent so long being a sideman that the idea of like fronting my own band is definitely a challenge for me. I'm like, like when I released Nightsville, that was mid-COVID, and so I was secretly pleased that I had an excuse to not have to go and organize gigs and do any of that. I was like, oh, sorry, I would have, of course, but no, it's not possible right now. So now I've got 2 albums worth of material that I've never really played live, and so it's kind of exciting actually to think that I could play a bunch of that stuff from both those albums.
I mean, it sounds like it must be fun to do the process of cherry picking your friends and favorite musicians to be on your record, though.
Yeah. Melbourne is so full of great musicians, and I mean, I play with like that soul band I said. I play with those guys regularly, and some of those guys are on the previous album. And then this time, I was just like, I want to just ask a couple of guys that I don't really know, that I just have seen, that I'm like, that guy. So, for example, the organ piano player, I'd never actually met him, but I just saw him play live once in a bar. I was like, yep, that guy. He goes really deep into the music. And so I just asked him, and it turned out great. I love what he added to it. And then some of the drummer I've known since uni. So yeah, it's a mix of guys. But yeah, Melbourne is so full of really high level musicians. So you kind of have a pick of, yeah.
Did they all go to Tasmania or not really?
No, the bass player was actually from Tasmania, or one of the bass players, but then the rest of the guys are Melbourne based, so they were doing it in bits and pieces, and I recorded the drums live with guitar and drums were recorded live in Melbourne, and then we took everything else to Tassie and put it all together.
Love it. Jacob, your sister wrote a piece about you in The Guardian that I'm grateful that you sent it to me. Do you want to do you want to just tell people what that's about? I'll include a link, of course, in the notes to this.
Yeah, so my sister wrote this. She's a brilliant writer, and she's written had 4 books published, and one of those books is all about our childhood. So it's a memoir, and she writes for The Guardian semi-regularly, these little beautiful pieces that are sort of just vignettes about her life. And she just had one published that was about us as kids, and essentially it was about a few things. It was partly about how I was like a super quiet kid, and she would speak for me, and we had this kind of dynamic where we were really intuitive with each other, and she felt like she could kind of read my mind and all this kind of stuff like that, which was true. And I was quiet, and I'm still, I mean, I don't know if it comes across, but I'm still, I'm the quietest guy in most situations that I find myself in socially. And the other part of it is that we went through all this. So we had sort of an idyllic childhood up until a point, and then within the space of 6 years, I'd lost another sister and then my father to suicide. And so that was really a big upheaval to the family. And then in the meantime, between my sister's death and my father, those intervening years, my father's mental health was like really declined, and he went into, a lot of depression and grief. And then that morphed into kind of being manic and being kind of off the planet. And eventually he was a psychiatrist too. So, and so he kind of ended up losing his, license and all that stuff because of the erratic behavior, and then and eventually took his own life. So all that was obviously, I mean, that still impacts me today, like in a huge way. But I mean, it's not that I think about it all the time. It's just that stuff is sort of just, in my body, and it's not far beneath the surface a lot of the time. But I do think what was interesting, because my sister touched on the role of music and all that stuff too. And when I think about those times, I often think about how the music was really accompanying all this kind of stuff, whether it was like the grief or like my dad was like went deep into listening to all these things that were really connecting with him, and that were kind of, sometimes freaking the rest of the family out. But he would, listen to John Lennon's solo stuff, some of that really raw kind of stuff on like full volume, night after night, kind of while kind of grieving. And then when he was manic, he would make mixtapes that were like, and be like obsessively showing us his mixtapes. And when he was at his worst, he even, I mean, I heard this was the story, but he kind of broke into someone's house and started playing their records. And so he had this obsessive relationship with music that was sort of, that kind of, I guess it scared the rest of us, but it also kind of instilled in me too, like that this is the power, like music is a powerful entity, and it's potent. And so that was, music was like surrounding all of that and just intertwined. So I can't really separate. So when I hear some of those songs now, it just can take me back instantly to that time and those feelings. So I used to avoid a lot of that music, like, oh, I can't listen to that because that's kind of brings back that feeling. But now over time, it's 30 years later, and some of that music is just because of its power, I just still go to it sometimes and like, it's amazing. And it was all great music too. It wasn't like, when I think back on it now, he had great taste in music through all of that stuff. So it wasn't like he was listening to, really bad music. So
I mean, heartbreaking, but you must be so grateful to have a sister like that who you at least, understood what you went through. I mean, I can't imagine anyone else could.
Yeah, we really went through something together, and we're really close now. And I mean, just the fact that she would write that sort of article, which, led to stuff like talking to you. Like, I don't know if this would have happened without sort of that sort of story. And she's just very, she's a very special writer, but I've always felt very loved by her and by my mum too. My mum's very kind of the rock in my life as well. So I'm lucky in that respect.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to do justice to her words, but, to paraphrase, she sort of said, we went through a lot of stuff together. I had a very quiet brother, but he, has found his voice playing instrumental music, which is kind of, this beautiful thing.
Mm.
Did she ask for your permission? Did she run that by you before the world saw it?
She showed me, but I didn't ask for any changes. I was just like, this is, it's great. Just, I didn't want to impose, but I loved what she wrote. And it's true. Like I do feel that music is sort of my best form of expression. Like I'm still like doing something like this is a challenge for me because I feel like the music itself can say so much. And then as soon as you start talking about the music, it's like, well, can you really capture it in words? I don't know, but so I feel when I'm playing live or like those are the moments where I feel kind of really connected to the other people and to the audience and so it really is like a language that you sort of kind of learn. It takes a long time to learn really, and still working at sort of, trying to speak that language as well as trying to get better at talking and communicating with words too. But that's been a challenge for me.
So did you say you already have like your next record? Is that what you said, or no?
No, I don't. I'm not someone that's constantly writing. I sort of, I'll do this stuff and then I'll just be like, okay, now I'm going to just go back to working on, guitar centric stuff and improvising, and because I'm obsessed with just learning new things on the guitar and always trying to get better at playing. And then eventually, I'll have an inkling of like, maybe I feel like writing something new. And then often, I feel like I have to be in a certain headspace, and then often I'll sit down and write like a bunch of songs like in a week when I'm in that kind of zone. But I'm not someone that's like constantly writing things down, or I sort of, so I definitely do something, but, and it might be more like a live. That's what I'm thinking maybe, because I've done these sort of albums that are very layered and pieced together. And I do like the idea of, because I love playing live, like it's kind of my favorite thing. So I'd like to do something like this, but in a more live setting, maybe.
It'd be fun.
Might be fun and challenging.
What albums are you obsessing over right now that aren't yours?
I've just recently heard that new S.G. Goodman album. I can't remember what it's called actually, but it's just released a few weeks ago, and that one's brilliant. I really like her work. It's sort of swampy and her voice is beautiful. And then it's not a new album, but I keep coming back to that Willie Nelson Teatro.
Yeah.
It was produced by Daniel Lanois. So that's sort of newish to me, and that's been a high rotation for me. I liked Adam Levy. I'm a big fan of Adam Levy, and his latest album, I think it's called Household.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
It's got some great playing. Is been a big influence actually, just sort of from afar. I've been sort of, ever since the Tracy Chapman kind of album, I've been like, oh, this guitarist has something special. And so I've been tuning into his stuff for years. Yeah. That's all I can think of at the minute. But
it's great. Those are all awesome records. So I'm going to include a link for everyone to check out the album Slow Gold. Bandcamp, best way, or it doesn't matter? Spotify, do you care?
Bandcamp's always better. I also have a website which sort of can direct you to all those places too.
Yeah. I hope folks check this out, because it is so in the Fretboard Journal wheelhouse, and the Adam Levy comparison is an apt one, because it is that sort of cool blues jazz based instrumental music, but it's kind of harkens back to Ry Cooder, like I said, and Blake Mills and all these folks we obsess over.
Yeah, and even I've been kind of really into, I think, someone that you work with, or Ryan Richter. I love his,
just texting with Ryan. He's coming to our Fretboard Summit in August.
Yeah, so I've been following him online for the last few years, and he's got something really special. And I love that album or EP that he put out.
One track.
He's one of those guys that are sort of jazz adjacent, but like there aren't really many straight ahead jazz people that I'm into these days, but all these guys are obviously influenced by Frizzell and Ry Cooder and stuff, and have all this kind of, a lot of vocab and a lot of knowledge on the guitar, but they're not playing any straight ahead jazz. They're doing their own kind of thing, and that's kind of what I'm really into. So guys like him and Dylan Day, those kind of guys.
Both of those guys are coming to Chicago.
Yeah, they really kind of prick my ears up, and like, so I'm far away, but I'm tuned into those guitarists over there. Yeah,
I love it. Yeah. We got to get you to Chicago one of these years.
Yeah, I'd love to come one day.
All right. Well, Jacob, thank you so much. This was so much fun, and I'm happy to introduce you to at least my little world. And I can't
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Yeah,
it's a kind of a thrill for me, because I do subscribe to the journal, and I've listened to a bunch of these, and I haven't really done a podcast before, so it's kind of a thrilling way to get into this. So really appreciate it.
All right. That was my conversation with Jacob. I'm going to let you all go find his music now. Again, it's called Slow Gold. It's on all the streaming platforms as well as Bandcamp. I hope you enjoy it. I love finding out about musicians who weren't on my radar but are making music that really speaks to me, and that is the case with Jacob. So I hope you loved this episode. As always, stay tuned for more. Thanks for listening.